Barcelona are fucked.
We've all been hearing about the investigation into Barca for what seems like ages. None of us really know what's going on, but we keep telling ourselves, surely it won't really knock them off the top, would it? Oh my god. Today might have been the day that marked the end of Barcelona, and I'm not being hyperbolic. The news today is huge. Today's damning reports, which includes probes and actual charges, all but puts the nail in Barcelona's coffin, and they might be lowered down to a level that's lower than my voice. Their future is bleak. The president of La Liga, Javier Tebas, was speaking to Movie Star a couple days ago about Barcelona and amongst other things as well, such as Mbappe's inevitable arrival at Real Madrid. However, regarding Barcelona, this is what he had to say. The road is long, but there are behaviors that have no explanation. The criminal proceedings are being investigated. We are also being active. The club may not be convicted, but the directors can. They can be acquitted. Well, based on today, that might have been a favorable outcome. He says that if the judge were to rule Barca to be relegated, that he would have to accept it. Well, based on today, that too might have been a favorable outcome. In fact, Tebas said for Barcelona to sign anyone in winter, they would have to move players, but that seems like such a non-issue in light of what's happened today. Barcelona, until yesterday, had allegedly paid over 7 million euros over 17 years to the current vice president of their own refereeing association, the CTA. I say up until yesterday because today they have been charged with exactly that. An investigation that began to find improper payments has now evolved onto a whole new level with charges of crime relating to bribery. And as per Judge Joaquin Aguirre's orders, the Spanish police raided the Royal Spanish Football Federation's offices just outside Madrid. This is not just a case of corruption, but a case of sustained crime relating to bribery, which, if you don't know, is a much, much thicker justice booty. The difference being that bribery is a crime that can only be committed by authorities and officials, whereas sports corruption can be committed by virtually anyone. What that means is sports corruption takes place on the pitch, whereas bribery takes place behind closed doors, specifically at an administrative level. So a lot more sneaky going on there. On one hand, sports corruption is a peasant's game, but on the other, bribery is where you really bet on yourself to be a piece of shit. It's insane to think about an investigation that started as a tax probe relating to payments made to a company that's not Barcelona is now resulting in Barcelona's quite literal demise. They're not only facing bankruptcy already, but they have also demolished their own stadium in hopes to revamp it. But the construction, it might never come, because I suppose they followed the breadcrumbs long enough to find the yeast infection behind it. And I will give you a rundown of events of how we're actually here at the end of the video, in case you're out of the loop. But what might Barcelona actually stand to face as a result of these accusations? Not investigation, charges. A professor of criminal law by the name of Emilio Cortez has analyzed today's charges and what it all could mean. He says dissolution is one of the penalties that comes with it. That's why I've always said that they have a D penalty. Dissolution, if you don't know, is the closing down or dismissal of an assembly, partnership, or official body. Basically, we might be looking at the end of Barcelona. Not the end of Barcelona in top flight, but the end. To impute Barcelona before yesterday, there were enough elements, but how big the bribery is makes that accusation be made in a more ambitious way. And this is why what started off as an investigation into the payments made in 2018 has now seen the scope of the case expand from 1 year to 17 years worth of activities. That has not only seen Bartomeu being convicted, but also the vice president of the refereeing association, as well as his son. And by the way, Not for a single second do I believe that the league and clubs like Real Madrid had no idea that any of this was going on this whole time. In fact, if they didn't, it's almost kind of worse, is it not? In fact, a rule that I've come to follow when it comes to these businessmen and politicians at the top is just assume the worst of them.
Generalizations and sweeping statements are absolutely the way to go here.
And the way it's all unraveling for Barcelona, with its finances up in the air and its stadium decimated to the ground, it's sad. So in March, UEFA launched an investigation into Barcelona and their improper payments to a company called Das Nil, which used to be a Whole Foods business ran by the now vice president of the refereeing association, Jose Maria Enriquez Negreira, in what we now know as the Negreira case. Essentially, there were envelopes being passed around through his Whole Foods company, which had by now pivoted into sports marketing. What's funny is that Negreira actually denies there ever being envelopes and said that it was just a verbal agreement for some refereeing consultation. But his son, who's also involved in these accusations, denied his father's version of events. He says that it wasn't just a verbal agreement. And you might ask, well, what kind of advantages are Barcelona receiving in exchange for 7 million euros over 17 years? Well, according to this report, the envelope contained a written report and a DVD containing a video analysis and profile detailing the on-pitch behavior of their upcoming referee, so that they know how to treat which referee in what way to maximize their chances to get favorable decisions and calls. So essentially, 7 million euros buys you a tutorial on how to be friends with a referee. Inflation is crazy. Back in my day, the best how-to channels were free.
If I see a girl with blue eyes, I might say, wow, your eyes are like blueberries. Wait, can I actually, I'm kind of hungry. Can I have?
It's also interesting to know that Tebas, while speaking to Movie Star, talked about installing cameras in all the locker rooms because that's where sports is headed from a entertainment standpoint. However, he says that there was one club that didn't want to play along. He didn't name the club, but your guess is probably the same as my guess, especially if there's physical evidence of shady behavior like hands and envelopes exchanging hands. In the meantime, Barcelona insisted they did nothing wrong and committed to running their own investigation, which is as reliable as my molar tooth that has 90% filling and 10% enamel.
And I think what could be potentially serious for Barcelona as well is UEFA are investigating as well. Back in March, they appointed disciplinary investigators to look into this case, and they provisionally allowed Barcelona to take part in this season's Champions League. But in June, they said that a future decision on admission or exclusion from the competition is reserved. So if Barcelona are found guilty of any wrongdoing regards to these payments to these referees, then there is still the possibility that they could be kicked out of the Champions League.
Hervé Solikol innocently seems to believe that Barcelona's involvement in the Champions League is where the buck stops, but buckaroo, you don't even know the half of it. I'm sure board members at the level of Barcelona will find some way to weasel out, but we have confirmation that Barcelona are quite literally dancing with dissolution. While we all laughed and celebrated every time Barcelona were facing another sanction for their decades of wrongdoings and bad faith play, the people who are really going to be punished are the people of Barcelona, who for years celebrated legends, but now, because of greedy businessmen who thought that they were above the world, have taken it to the grave.